The wrong order at the restaurant. Okay, so I have to tell you about the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me at a restaurant, and I promise you, it was entirely my fault.
Okay, I love this story so much because I was actually there when this happened. We went to that restaurant together and I watched the whole thing from across the table.
I walked in, I sat down, I looked at the menu for about 3 seconds, and I said to the waiter, "I'll have the special, please." Very confident, very calm. The waiter looked at me and said, "Which special, sir?"
Lucas looked at the menu for maybe 3 seconds and then just said, "I'll have the special." Like he already knew exactly what he was doing. And then the waiter asked, "Which special?" And I could see Lucas starting to panic. His eyes went a little wide and he said, "The fish one." Like there was only one fish in the whole ocean.
"We have 3 today." And I said, "Oh, right, the fish one." And he said, "The salmon or the tuna?" And I said, "Yes." And he just stared at me. He said, "Sir, those are 2 different dishes." So I panicked and I said, "Okay, the salmon, definitely the salmon." And then the food arrived and it was tuna. I had said salmon, but somehow tuna arrived at my table. And here is the thing. I did not want to send it back because I felt so embarrassed already. So I just ate the tuna, and it was actually delicious. But still, not my best moment. I got lost in a shopping mall once for almost 45 minutes, and I am not proud of it.
I had to look down at my menu so he could not see me smiling. And then the tuna arrived instead of the salmon, and he just looked at it for a moment and then started eating without saying a word. I said, "Is that what you ordered?" And he said, "It is now." I laughed for about 5 minutes, but honestly, the tuna was really good. We went back to that restaurant many times after that. I cannot believe Lucas got lost in that mall because I have been there many times and it is actually very easy to navigate. There are maps everywhere, big maps on every floor with arrows. But okay, I will be fair. The escalators are a little confusing because they are not in the center of the building. They are on the sides, and if you are not paying attention, you can easily go up on the wrong side and end up somewhere completely different. So I understand. A little.
It was a big mall, to be fair. 3 floors, hundreds of shops, and every corridor looked exactly the same. I was looking for a sports shop because I needed new running shoes. I asked a security guard and he said, "3rd floor, turn left at the escalator, then walk straight." Easy. Except I went up the wrong escalator and ended up in the food court on the 2nd floor. I found another security guard and she was very kind. She actually walked me to the sports shop herself, like I was a lost child. I said, "Thank you so much."
The part I love most is that the security guard walked him there herself. Like she physically took him to the shop. And Lucas accepted this completely. He did not say, No, I can find it." He just said, "Thank you so much, let's go." That is actually very wise. When someone offers to help, you say yes. And apparently, he found great shoes, so everything worked out perfectly.
I appreciate it. And she said, "No problem, it happens all the time." And I could tell she meant it. I was clearly not the first person to get lost in that mall. I found great shoes though. Worth it. So I had a job interview last year that started terribly and ended surprisingly well, and I think about it a lot.
The coffee story is legendary. Lucas told me about this interview the same evening, and I could not stop laughing. He was so well prepared, so calm, so ready. And then he stood up and just destroyed everything in 1 second.
I arrived 10 minutes early, which felt great. I sat in the waiting area. I was calm, I was prepared, and then the interviewer came out and said, "Lucas?" And I stood up too fast and knocked my coffee cup off the little table next to me. It fell on the floor, the lid came off, and coffee went everywhere. I said, "Oh no, I am so sorry, I am so sorry." And she just looked at me and said, "Don't worry, it happens."
But here's what I think is interesting. A lot of people would have been so embarrassed that they could not recover. They would have sat in that interview thinking about the coffee for the whole hour. But Lucas made a joke about it immediately and moved on. That takes confidence, actually. And he got the job. That is the amazing part. I think the interviewer saw someone who could handle a stressful moment with humor and stay calm.
We went into the interview room and she asked me to tell her about myself. And I said, "Well, as you can see, I am very good at making an entrance." She laughed, and after that, the whole interview felt relaxed and easy. I got the job. I still think the coffee moment actually helped me. It made me human. It made her laugh. Sometimes accidents are the best thing that can happen to you. I decided to learn how to cook about 2 years ago because I was tired of eating the same 3 things every week: pasta, sandwiches, and cereal. That was my entire diet.
That is actually a great quality in a colleague. So in a way, spilling the coffee was the best thing Lucas could have done. He will never agree with me on this, but I think it is true. I remember when Lucas told me he was learning to cook, and honestly, I was a little worried. Because before that, every time I asked him what he had for dinner, he said, pasta or cereal.
Not great. I started with something simple: scrambled eggs. I watched a video online, I bought the ingredients, I followed every step, and I burned them. Completely. The pan was too hot, I looked at my phone for 30 seconds and suddenly everything was black. But I tried again the next day, and the day after that, and slowly I got better. Now I can make a proper omelet, a good pasta sauce, and even a chicken stir-fry.
Those were his 2 options, every single day. But I have to give him credit because he actually kept going even when it was difficult. Burning the eggs, burning the rice. One time I think he burned water. I am not sure how that is possible, but he managed it. And he did not give up.
Last month, I cooked dinner for 4 friends and they all said it was delicious. One of them even asked for the recipe. Me. Someone asked me for a recipe. I am still not over it. Cooking is one of the best things I have ever learned. Okay, Mia. I want to tell this story and please do not interrupt me until I finish, because you always add things that did not happen. So, the first time I met Mia was at a language class.
The dinner he cooked for us last month was genuinely impressive. I had a chicken stir-fry and it was full of flavor. The vegetables were perfectly cooked, and everything was warm at the same time, which is harder than it sounds. Someone asked him for the recipe, and I think that was the happiest I have ever seen him. He sent the recipe in our group chat immediately. Twice.
We were both learning something new, and the teacher put us together for a conversation exercise. The exercise was simple. We had to introduce ourselves and ask 3 questions. Easy, right? Except Mia asked me about 15 questions. She went completely off the script. The teacher kept looking over and Mia just kept talking. I did not mind at all, actually. It was the best conversation I had in that class. After class, I said, "Hey, do you want to get coffee?" And Mia said, "I was waiting for you to ask that," which is such a Mia thing to say.
Okay, so I need to give my version of this story because Lucas always says I asked 15 questions, and that is a small exaggeration. It was maybe 10. And they were all very interesting questions, so I do not apologize for any of them. The exercise was supposed to be simple. Introduce yourself, ask 3 questions, done. But Lucas gave such interesting answers that I just kept asking more.
We went to a cafe around the corner, we talked for 2 hours, and by the end of it, I felt like I had known her for years. Some people just feel like that, like you already know them before you know them. Mia is one of those people. I have a complicated relationship with trains. They are comfortable, they are fast, they are great for the environment, but they are never on time, never, at least not when I need them to be. One time, I had a very important meeting in another city. I planned everything perfectly. I bought the ticket 2 weeks early, I arrived at the station 30 minutes before departure, I found my seat, I put my bag up, I sat down.
He mentioned he had lived in 3 different countries, and I said, "Wait, which countries?" And he told me. And then I asked why. And then we were completely off the script, and the teacher was definitely giving us a look. When he asked if I wanted to get coffee after class, I said yes, immediately. We went to that little cafe on the corner, and we talked for so long that the staff started putting chairs on the tables around us. We were basically the last people there.
Perfect. And then the announcement came. This train is delayed by 1 hour and 20 minutes due to a technical problem. I sat there for a second, and then I called my colleague and said, I'm going to be late. She said, how late? I said, maybe an hour and a half. She said, Lucas, the meeting starts in 45 minutes. I said, I know. In the end, I joined the meeting by phone from the train station, sitting on a bench with my laptop on my knees. Not ideal, but it worked. The meeting went fine, and I learned to always have a backup plan. Last summer, I decided to try paddle tennis for the first time because my friend kept saying it was easy and anyone could do it. Anyone, he said. You will love it, he said. It is so simple, he said. I arrived at the court, I picked up the racket, and I immediately hit the ball directly into the net. First shot, before the game even started properly. My friend said, that was just a warm-up. Try again. I tried again, I hit it into the net again.
I walked home thinking, okay, that was a really good afternoon. I was right. Lucas is one of the best people I know. Even if he exaggerates how many questions I asked. I have so much sympathy for this story because train delays are one of the most frustrating things in modern life. You plan everything, you do everything right, and then something completely outside your control ruins the whole schedule. Lucas is actually very good at planning. He is the kind of person who arrives early, checks everything twice, has a printed copy of the ticket and a digital copy. So when the delay happened, it was not his fault at all. Sometimes life just does that.
But here is the thing. After about 30 minutes, something clicked. I started actually hitting the ball. Not well, but hitting it. By the end of the session, I was having real rallies, making real shots, and genuinely enjoying myself. My friend filmed the last 10 minutes and sent it to our group chat with the caption, Lucas is a natural, which is the biggest lie ever told, but it was very kind of him. I went back the following weekend, and the one after that. Now I play every Saturday. I'm still not good, but I love it.
But the image of him sitting on a bench at the train station with his laptop on his knees, joining a meeting by phone, people walking past with suitcases, I find that very funny and also very impressive. He did not cancel the meeting, he did not make excuses, he just found a way. That is very Lucas. When things go wrong, he does not stop. He just adjusts. I think that is a really good quality to have.
I organized a surprise birthday party for my best friend last year, and it almost went completely wrong in about 4 different ways. First, I forgot to tell half the guests the correct address. So 3 people showed up at the wrong building on the same street. They were standing outside a dentist's office for 15 minutes before they called me. I said, oh no, it is number 42, not number 24. They said, Lucas. I said, I know, I am sorry. But despite everything, the wrong address, the cake that arrived 20 minutes late, and the music that was too loud for the neighbors, my friend walked in and his face was absolutely incredible. Pure shock, then pure happiness.
I have seen Lucas play paddle tennis, and I want to say he is much better now than he was at the beginning. At the beginning, from what his friend described, it was not pretty. But now he has actually got a real style. You can see he enjoys it. I think the important thing about trying a new sport is not being good at it right away. Most people stop too early because they feel embarrassed or frustrated. But if you stay with something for a few weeks, something always clicks. Your body learns, your eyes get better, your reactions improve. It just takes time. I tried a new sport last year too. I started swimming properly, with technique, not just splashing around. And the first few weeks were awful. I swallowed so much water. My arms hurt, my technique was terrible, and I looked nothing like the people in the lane next to me. But I kept going, and now I swim 3 times a week, and it is my favorite part of the day. So I completely understand what Lucas felt when things finally clicked on that court.
He said, I had no idea. How did you do this? And I said, with great difficulty. But it was so worth it. That is the thing about planning something for someone you care about. Even when it goes wrong, it still feels right in the end. Moving to a new city is one of the most exciting and terrifying things you can do. I did it 3 years ago, and I still remember the first week very clearly. I had a small apartment, no furniture, and I knew exactly 2 people in the whole city. The first night I slept on the floor because my bed had not arrived yet. I ordered food from a delivery app. I sat on the floor eating noodles, and I looked around this empty apartment and I thought, what have I done? This was a big mistake. I am going back. But I did not go back. I went to the supermarket the next morning, I bought some basics, I found a coffee shop I liked, and I started exploring. Every day I found something new. A nice park, a good bookshop, a street market on Sunday mornings. Slowly, the city started to feel like mine. Now I cannot imagine living anywhere else. That first night on the floor feels very far away.
I helped Lucas organize this party, and I want to be honest. The wrong address situation was very stressful in the moment. I was at the venue making sure everything was ready, and Lucas was texting me saying, 3 people are at the dentist. And I said, what? And he said, wrong address. And I said, Lucas. But everything came together in the end, and when the birthday boy walked in, that moment was absolutely worth all the stress. His face went from normal to confused to completely shocked to the biggest smile. That moment is why you organize surprise parties. Nothing else matters after you see that face. The cake was a little late and the music was a little loud, but nobody cared. People were laughing, dancing, talking, eating. It was a really warm and happy evening. And Lucas, despite the wrong address and the late cake, was a wonderful host. He made sure everyone had food, everyone had a drink, everyone felt welcome. That is not easy to do. I was impressed, honestly. Moving to a new city alone is one of the bravest things a person can do. I know because I did it too, a few years before Lucas.
I learned to drive later than most people. I was 24 years old when I had my first driving lesson, and everyone around me already had their license. I felt a little embarrassed about it, honestly. My instructor was a very calm, very patient man, which was good because I needed calm and patient. On the first lesson, I drove about 20 meters and then stopped because a cat walked in front of the car. My instructor said, "That is fine, very good reaction." I said, "I thought we were going to hit it." He said, "We were not going to hit it. You did well. It took me 4 months of weekly lessons to feel comfortable."
And that first night in an empty apartment is one of the loneliest feelings. You sit there and you think, why did I do this? Everything I know is somewhere else. But then the second day comes, and the third. And slowly, you start building your life in this new place. You find your coffee shop, your supermarket, your favorite street to walk down on a Sunday. The city starts to feel familiar, and then it starts to feel like home. Lucas found his people here too. He found a job he loves, friends he trusts, routines that make him happy. And I think moving here was the best decision he ever made. Even if the first night on the floor with noodles did not feel that way. Sometimes the hardest beginnings lead to the best stories. That first night on the floor is now one of his favorite things to talk about, which I think says everything.
But the day I passed my test, I was so happy. I called my mom immediately, and she cried a little. I drove home by myself for the first time, and I put the music on loud, and I just felt completely free. That feeling of doing something difficult after a long time of trying is one of the best feelings there is. Worth every lesson. Something I started doing about a year ago that completely changed my life, and I mean that seriously, is language exchange. You meet someone who speaks the language you are learning and they want to learn your language, and you help each other.
I learned to drive at 18, and I thought I was very late. Lucas learned at 24, and I think that actually shows a lot of self-awareness. He waited until he was really ready, until he actually needed it. There is nothing wrong with that. The cat story is my favorite detail from his driving lessons. He stopped the car for a cat, and his instructor said, "Good reaction." Because it was a good reaction. You stop for animals. You stop for anything that crosses the road. That is exactly what you should do.
Exchange partner was a woman from Brazil. Her English was very good and my Portuguese was basically zero. We met every week at a cafe and we split the time. 30 minutes in English, 30 minutes in Portuguese. In the beginning, the Portuguese part was very difficult. I made so many mistakes.
So actually, his very first driving instinct was correct. And when he passed his test, he called me too, not just his mum. He called me and said, "Mia, I passed." And I said, "Of course you did." And he said, "I am driving home right now by myself for the first time." And I said, "Be careful." And he said, "I am always careful." Which is mostly true. He is a good driver now. Calm, careful, never in a hurry. Exactly how you want someone to drive when you are in the passenger seat. Language exchange is something I also believe in completely. I did a French exchange for 2 years, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Not just for the language, but for everything that comes with it. The friendship, the culture, the different way of seeing things.
She was very patient with me. After 6 months, I could have a real basic conversation in Portuguese. Not perfect, not fluent, but real. I could order food, ask for directions, introduce myself, talk about my week. And the English she learned was much more natural and confident too.
Lucas was so dedicated to his Portuguese sessions. Every week, no excuses, even when he was tired or busy. And I could hear the improvement. In the beginning, he would try to say something and then stop and say, "I do not know that word." But after a few months, he started finding ways around the words he did not know. He described things differently. That is what real progress sounds like. The woman he did the exchange with sounds wonderful, and I hope they stay friends for a long time. That is the real magic of language exchange. You start as strangers with a shared goal, and you end as real friends with a shared experience. Language is just the beginning. The connection is the real thing. I was not on this camping trip, and honestly, after hearing the tent story, I am a little relieved. 4 people, none of whom had ever camped before, trying to put up a tent in the dark.
We are still in touch today. She is one of my favorite people. Language exchange is not just about learning words. It is about making real connections with real people. That is the part nobody tells you about. I went on a camping trip with 3 friends last summer, and I want to be very clear about something before I tell this story. I had never been camping before. Never. Not once. My idea of nature is a park with benches. So this was already going to be an adventure. We arrived at the campsite, we unpacked everything, and then we realized that none of us actually knew how to set up the tent. We had watched a video online, but it looked much easier in the video. We spent 45 minutes trying to put it together.
That is a recipe for a very long evening. But the woman who helped them is my hero of this story. She heard these 4 people struggling. She came over, she helped, and she had it done in 8 minutes. That is a person who has been camping her whole life and knows exactly what to do. I hope they thanked her properly. Lucas said they thanked her 10 times, so I think yes. But the part about sitting outside under the stars and talking until 2 in the morning, that is the part I would love. No phones, no city noise, just the people you like and a sky full of stars. That sounds genuinely perfect to me.
At one point, it looked like a very sad triangle. My friend said, "I think we are missing a piece." I said, "I think we are missing knowledge." A very kind woman from the tent next to ours came over and helped us. She had it done in about 8 minutes. We thanked her about 10 times. That night, we cooked sausages on a small fire, we sat outside under the stars, and we talked until 2 in the morning. It was one of the best nights I have had in years. No phones, no screens, just good friends and a very dark sky full of stars. I am going again this summer, and I am watching more tent videos before I go.
Lucas says he is going again this summer, and I am seriously thinking about joining this time. I will watch the tent video in advance though, and I will bring a backup torch and a good raincoat. I like nature, but I like to be prepared. We'll teach you English as soon as possible, and we'll see you in our next language development lesson. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. See you soon!